Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody. What's going on? It's your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome to Big 12 Insiders Game Day, joined by my man, Cody Nagel, and Alec Busse on location. He is out. He's joining us today, man. We appreciate Alec being with us. Got a lot that we're going to talk about today. Obviously, the college football rankings came out. We'll talk about, where we stand there. Did last weekend help or hurt us? What is going on as far as Mike Gundy and Kyle Whittingham? Is this going to be kind of their last year? In the Big 12, the conference, is it better than the ACC, or is it even better than maybe one of the other two conferences? One of them I think is extremely overrated. We'll get into that and more. But before we do, remember, everybody, continue to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're a race to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of this month. So we appreciate everybody's feedback, man. So first things first, Alec, again, you're joining us on location. So we appreciate you joining in. And as I said that, he's freezing up on us. So hopefully he's still there. What's going on, Alec? How you doing, man?
I'm good. We're doing this in the car, coming back from a little short road trip with the girlfriend, midweek road trip. We had an important appointment here this morning. No one new coming into the world, anything like that, but I had to do some business here this morning. So decided I wanted to join the show, and we're doing it from the car.
I appreciate it, man. And tell her thank you. I'm sure she can hear. So I appreciate her allowing you to join us again on location. Cody, how is it going today, my man?
I'm doing great. We should probably disclose that Alec isn't driving, just to make that clear. At least I think. At least I think.
I was going to say, wait a minute now. I don't know.
Well, he hasn't looked up in like 2 minutes, so who knows?
No, he hasn't. He hasn't, has he? Interesting. So, guys, let's kind of get into this. College football playoff, the rankings came out last night. Obviously, a lot of things can change because college football has been pretty hectic, especially in the Big 12 this year. Speaking of last weekend, and I'll start with you, Cody, do we think that last weekend actually hurt the Big 12's chances on getting multiple teams in? Because I've heard different ways. I have my own take on it, but I'm interested what you guys think. Does it help or hurt trying to get multiple teams in?
Yeah, I think all the chaos last week definitely hurt, just because I think the best case scenario for the Big 12 to get two teams in was BYU running the table and Iowa State running the table and getting, two undefeated teams once you get to the conference championship, and then kind of, forcing the committee or whatever to put both those in with the champion getting the likely that first round bye, and then the second place or runner up getting one of those at-large bids. But yeah, I think last week with kind of all the chaos that went on, I think that really hurt the chances. And then even more so with the actual rankings that came out and where teams are seated. I think that was even more of a realization that, the Big 12's probably only getting one team in this year, because, BYU's 9. We can, argue about why they're that far down. But then you go even further down. Iowa State's 17, Kansas State's 19, Colorado then at 20. I don't see a scenario where those teams are going to move up or get enough help to where they're able to get an at-large bid.
Yeah, I agree with Cody. I think the path to getting two teams in now is more cloudy, and I think it probably includes BYU continuing to go undefeated. And then you probably need Iowa State to end the regular season 11-1, and then maybe win the Big 12 championship game. And then if BYU is undefeated at that point, potentially you have 2 11-1 teams, or 12-1 team, 2 12-1 teams in the playoff. Sorry, I had to do math in my head there. 2 12-1 teams in the playoff. I think that's the Big 12's path. I think K-State, the only way they can get in right now is with a Big 12 title. I probably think it's similar for Colorado at this point as well. I think BYU right now, you're looking at it, is probably the one team that is most likely to be able to get in as an at-large, and they would have to end the regular season undefeated and lose in the Big 12 title game. I personally think a more interesting angle in relation to the playoff in the Big 12 is if BYU doesn't win the Big 12 and a 2-loss Iowa State or a 2-loss Colorado team wins the Big 12, does Boise State jump them? Does Boise State get the 4th bye? I think that's kind of on the table if you really look at it, and where the rankings kind of debuted here last night.
Yeah, first off, that scenario, if that were to happen, I think that absolutely would be the case. I think Boise would jump a 2-loss Big 12 champion. But I'm going to go the other way. And the reason that I go the other way with it is we've seen the committee manipulate the rankings to get teams in where they want them to get in. We've seen it several times. And the reason that I say that if Colorado wins out, and I don't even think Colorado's got to go to the Big 12 title game. If they don't own the tiebreakers, I don't think it matters because they will manipulate the rankings because they are drooling to get Colorado in there. We're kidding ourselves if we don't think that. They want them in this thing. Now, are they going to lose another game and all that kind of stuff? But there's teams ahead of them. If they win out, they're going to move them up to be able to get them an at-large bid. Is it warranted? I don't know. But we've seen worse, Cody. We've seen the committee do it, number one, against the Big 12 previously. We've seen them move teams down. You win by 50 points. Not good enough. You're out. So I just think that is something that's on the table because money's involved.
Yeah, and maybe you do have a point there with Colorado because last night when, they were revealing the rankings and, they get to 24 to, 21 and Colorado still isn't revealed. I'm like, okay, how high are they putting Colorado, or did they somehow just leave Colorado out? And then they come in at number 20 and I'm like, okay, that was higher than I expected them to be. But then I also kind of had the thought like, okay, maybe they're trying to figure out a way. We put them up high enough, it gives them less room they have to move up for us to put them in there. Because as we all know, in my opinion, the first rankings really don't mean a whole lot because there's still so much that's going to shake out.
Right.
But I do get kind of what you're saying, where the way they order them in these first rankings does have an impact on the final ones just because of how they set it up. But again, I think there's still just so much that's going to play out that, they can try to set them up how they want, but they can't manipulate the results on the field is what I guess I'm trying to say.
No, they definitely can't manipulate the results on the field. But you're right. And that's why I think Colorado's 20 because they don't have very far to go to get up there. And the teams that are ahead of them, they play each other. So these teams that are ahead of them, they have to play. So somebody's going to lose. And if Colorado can get high enough, I'm just saying, man, they'll put them in. They really will. And I'm not so sure that I'm against that. I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to hate that response and what I said. They don't want to see them in. But to me, if it's all about money and you want to get the most eyeballs, and I'm in for that. And not to mention, Colorado's not a terrible football team. It'd be one thing if they were terrible. Now, they may end up that way down the stretch, but I don't anticipate that. So I just want to see the best football possible. So I'm not opposed to it. Let it work for the Big 12 in years where it hasn't worked for the Big 12 in the past. So that's kind of the way that I feel about it. Moving on, especially what happened this past weekend with these upsets, Iowa State losing, Kansas State losing. Alec, you've mentioned it a couple times. You weren't sure how good Kansas State is. I mentioned that, and people at Kansas State wanted to bite my head off. I'm like, man, you just got to watch the games. You guys are seeing the same games I'm seeing. I go, it's okay to say that they're not as good as what we thought they were going to be because, quite frankly, it's the truth. But having said that, I still believe the Big 12 is a better conference than the ACC. I saw what happened. We thought Clemson was going to be this big, bad team, that they were going to be on the outside of getting into the college football playoff, and they just got their head beaten in at home to Louisville. That game wasn't even really competitive, which is crazy to think. That was an absolute destruction. And Louisville is not very good. I can tell you that right now. And you all know me, I'm a diehard Louisville fan. Louisville is not very good. Big 12 better than the ACC, Alec?
I don't know if there's an answer to that question, to be completely honest with you. I know some people are considering Miami to be a true national title contender as they're undefeated here entering the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. I don't think their defense is good enough.
Nope.
I think if you view Miami as being a true national title contender, then you probably do think that the ACC is better than the Big 12. I think SMU is good. I think SMU would compete right at the top of the Big 12 if they were in the league as well. The bottom of each conference also isn't very good. Like Oklahoma State is winless. Arizona went on the road and got just demolished by a UCF team that'll fight to get to bowl eligibility here in the last month. And the bottom of the ACC isn't very good either. I think it's just kind of what you prefer in each conference about which league is better. I don't know, Cody. You have more of a pulse nationally than I probably do, but to me, they're one and the same.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think they're pretty much even at this point. I mean, Miami's up at number 4 in these playoff rankings. I think that's probably a little high. They've kind of had this. I mean, you mentioned the defense not being great. They've kind of had this tendency of playing to the level of their opponents, and usually in that case, that's down to the level of their opponents. You want to talk about the one possession wins that they had, kind of the miracle finishes that they needed to stay unbeaten at this point. I think the top's probably pretty even when you put Miami and BYU up against each other. I don't know. I mean, I could put the Big 12 maybe slightly ahead, just because I think you've got Iowa State, Kansas State, and Colorado there that are probably better than the next 3 in the ACC, which is what, SMU, Clemson, Pittsburgh, or Louisville, whichever order you want to put them in there. But yeah, I mean, I think that the top is maybe just a little bit better. But I think the bottom of the ACC is probably worse than the bottom of the Big 12. I mean, Florida State's completely checked out. They've got some talented players on their roster, but they're not a good team right now. They've completely checked out from what they're doing. I think they're just trying to figure stuff out for next year. Stanford isn't any good. Boston College has kind of been a disappointment once they've gotten into ACC play. So yeah, I think the bottom of the ACC is probably worse than the Big 12, and the top of the Big 12 is probably just slightly better than the ACC, if that makes any sense.
Nope, it makes perfect sense to me, and I agree. The thing is, it's just what you said. Florida State's checked out. I think Oklahoma State's checked out, and they're not any good. Utah's not any good. I mean, there's some bad football being played at the bottom of both of these conferences. But I agree with Alec and both of you as far as Miami. I don't think Miami, while they would probably be at the top of this conference, I don't think they win it because they don't play any defense whatsoever. And I get that you got to score points, and I understand all that, but they don't stop anyone. They're going to be a one and done in the college football playoff. They're not going to win a game. I don't consider them to be a national title contender. I just don't. I know they have some talent, but their defense just isn't good enough at those levels, not in my opinion. Now, they could prove me wrong, and they could change it all around, but at those levels, their defense just hasn't been good enough to be considered one of the top teams in the country. I agree with you, Cody. 4 is a little high for me, but it is what it is. What are you going to do? You could have – I mean, I know what people will say. Well, they're at the top of the conference. Well, BYU's at the top of the conference, but they were at 9. So you didn't have to put them at 4 if you didn't want to. So I don't know. I think the Big 12 is better. Like I said, there's bad football at the bottom of this conference, but there's bad football at the bottom of every conference and I mentioned this because I think the Big 10 is way overrated. I really do. I'm not saying that the Big 12 is better, but I don't think it's that far off. I think the Big 10 is just so overrated. I get it. Oregon and Ohio State are right up there as the best teams in the country. But then you have Penn State, and Penn State's probably pretty good, although they're never going to beat Oregon. They're never going to beat Michigan or Ohio State. They're never going to do that under James Franklin. It's just not happening. But you get past that, and how good is it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They were trying to pub USC early in the year for being good because they beat LSU. Well, we see how that turned out. I don't know that the Big 12 is that far behind the Big 10, Alec.
No, I actually agree with you. I think that obviously what separates the two leagues is that the Big Ten has national title contenders at the top with the Ducks and Ohio State, like you said. I think Indiana is an interesting case study. They haven't really played anyone that's very good to this point, but we're going to see how good they are here in the month of November because they have to play on the road at Ohio State. I know they play Michigan this week, and they're about a 14-point favorite against the Wolverines. So that's, a sizable line. But they've beaten every team this year by about a combined 300 points, and they've won every game by 14 points. So I think Indiana's pretty good. And I think if you drop Penn State in the Big 12, like, the SEC has to get there, it needs teams like, it needs Washington, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, those type of schools to be good.
No, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. Go ahead, Cody. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying, I thought we lost Alec there for a second too.
Yeah. I think the Big Ten, like you said, you need those middle schools to be good. But I just don't think they are. I just don't think they're as good. Like Alec's right. The national title contenders, that's what separates them. But you get to the middle of that conference, and if you want to throw, and you should throw Indiana in the top, you got to give them their respect until they lose. I know they haven't played anybody any good, and they haven't. Let's not kid ourselves. But until they lose, and the way that they've been winning, if they've been eking out games, for instance, if they've been winning games the way that Miami has been winning some of these games, we wouldn't think nearly as high of Indiana. And that's my only thing about Miami is, well, why do they get the grace that Miami, why do they get that grace and Indiana doesn't? And I understand, but we all know the reason is because reputation. We all think that Miami was supposed to be good and Indiana wasn't supposed to be good. And that's where I think the big difference is, because you'll never be able to convince me if Miami was winning the games the same way, or if Indiana was winning the games the way that Miami is winning, I'm not sure that Indiana would even be anywhere near the top of these playoffs right now, or anywhere close to it, even being undefeated.
I mean, they'd probably be on the same. I mean, I know Pittsburgh lost last week, but they'd probably be around that same area as a team that, hasn't really played anyone. They snuck out some close wins, and they weren't really that high in, like the AP top 25 or coaches poll coming into last weekend before they lost. So, yeah, I think you're really right on that point too.
Yeah, I want to see a little bit more from everybody, but I'm really excited for this college football playoff, man. I think it's going to be fun having more teams in. I'm just interested to see where it's going to go, but more importantly, there's still a lot of football left, that I think sometimes gets left out of here. We got a lot of football to be decided, and I know you guys, I've said it on here many times, I love chaos, and chaos is coming, man. It is absolutely coming. So speaking of some chaos, guys, I've heard it through the grapevine. Mike Gundy, Kyle Whittingham, possibly being this is their last year at both of these universities, man. I'll start with you, Alec. What do you think about these two? And they're both struggling. Don't get me wrong. Their programs are in the toilet right now, as far as this season anyway. You think this is their last year at Oklahoma State and Utah?
I don't have too much intel on the Gundy thing or the Whittingham situation. Obviously, Whittingham has already announced kind of a succession plan, or Utah's announced a succession plan for when he's done. I think in a perfect world, Whittingham would have liked to come into the Big 12, have a really good season, potentially go to the CFP, and then hang it up. But now with the way it's kind of gone this year, you wonder if he wants one more crack at it in 2025. I think the Gundy situation. I will. But to me, he's always been one that doesn't necessarily like the current landscape of the sport. And I think that that's kind of come through in various ways that he's commented publicly over the last 2 or 3 years. And I also think that the comments that he made earlier this week, while I do think they were in a joking Mike Gundy tone that he often speaks in, they were kind of disrespectful to certain populations. And he gets away with a lot of these comments because he's never really been punished for them by Oklahoma State. I mean, even going back to 2020 when he wore like the OAN shirt on his boat dock. I don't think he was ever punished. I think he just had to release a public apology. He had to do the same thing with the DUI comment at Big 12 Media Days when Ollie Gordon was speaking, and he was like, well, I've done that 1,000 times. And then obviously the comment that he had earlier this week about, those are the people that can't pay their bills. Like, to me, he says those things and they're just funny because it's Mike Gundy being Mike Gundy, but at the same time, they're not the right thing to say. So you kind of do have to wonder what his future holds. But I think both will be back if they want to be back because of what they've accomplished at their schools. But you have to wonder how much the current landscape is aligned with their desires.
Yeah, I think with Whittingham, I think it's kind of in the writing that he's probably close to an end just because of what Alec mentioned and the succession plan that they have and his replacement already being in line there. But with Gundy, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for saying this, but I don't have any like sourcing on this or anything. I think this is more just from talking to people who are cover the program and who have a good understanding of how things are right now. I think there's a good chance that he might retire at the end of the season. And I think you listen to how he talks, how he's, like Alec mentioned, he doesn't really like the landscape of college football and the way it's heading. We can all agree that there needs to be some fixes and stuff like that. But I just think he's kind of over all of it. And I think when you talk about like the on-field performance and the on-field results, they're 0-6 in Big 12 play. They still haven't won a game in the conference. They're gonna be. He's gonna be forced, in my opinion, to make some staff changes, and that means letting go people who are his best friends, who he's coached with for 15 years. Some of them. I think the shortest tenure guy is probably would be Brian Nardo, the defensive coordinator, who's been there for only 2 years. But everyone else has been there for 5, 6, close to 10 years even. That I don't think he wants to completely overhaul his staff, and he can't just go into next year with the same coaching staff and not make big changes and expect it to just suddenly turn around again. So I think I just don't think he's going to want to do that. So I think he might just say, you know what, it's time for me to move on. Let somebody else take over now. I had my run, but I also don't know. He's pretty stubborn. I think we've kind of all figured that out. That I don't know if he's going to want to just walk away, and maybe he does make it difficult on Oklahoma State, and kind of forces them to fire him, and maybe it turned into some sort of ugly departure like what Gary Patterson was at TCU. They wanted to say that was a mutual agreement to go their separate ways, but I think we all kind of know behind the scenes it really wasn't like that. So yeah, I just get the sense that there's probably Gundy's going to have to consider retiring at the end of the season, and who knows what that means for the future of Oklahoma State football, just because he's been the face of that program for 20 plus years now and gotten them to such a big height in their history.
Yeah,
I would just say regarding Gundy, this is his first truly bad season that he's had. Now there's been years where they have underachieved, but this is his first like truly bad season since his first year back in 2005. And I think he's coached them to 17 or 18 bowl games since being hired in 2005. And I think they had only gone to 15 or 16 in their program's history prior to him being hired as a head coach to replace Les Miles in the mid 2000s. So I think Mike Gundy, in a certain sense, is like the modern day Bill Snyder. And maybe that's a little unfair to one of them, but he's done incredible things at a program that historically has not had the sustained success that he has had there over the last 20 years. So to me, he deserves it.
Oh, yeah, you got cut off there, Alec, at the end.
No, I think Gundy deserves a leash because he has had so much success there. But I think, I don't think the athletic director and the president can just be like, yeah, just, you get to do whatever, like keep the same staff. Or I think he's got to make staff changes and significant staff changes. Obviously, the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator, he needs to address that. But I think he also needs to address, some position coaches where, spots have just not performed up to, where they have in the past. I just don't think that he's going to want to completely overhaul his staff and, part ways with, some of his best friends and whatnot. So, I think it's a really interesting thing that's going to play out here in the next, month or so. And, for all we know, they win the last 3 games and they reach bowl eligibility, and it's, suddenly not that big of a deal or whatnot. But if they keep losing the way they are and the on-field effort just isn't there, I mean, yeah, I think there's going to be some pretty big changes in Stillwater.
Yeah, I think starting with Whittingham, I think kind of the writing may be on the wall with the succession plan already in place. Because look, we can just say that it's a quarterback issue. It's not just a quarterback issue, what's going on with Utah right now. And maybe he doesn't want to be around to do a true rebuild. Now, the one thing that I will say is that that Utah has embraced the transfer portal. So changing their fortunes, you can do that pretty quickly, and they get into it. It's the exact opposite of Mike Gundy, where they're going to need to be able to make some changes, or going to have to make some changes. And while, Cody, you talked about they're going to have to make some coaching changes, they are, but they're also going to have to make some personnel changes. They need to get better players into Stillwater. Is he willing to do that? Up to this point, the answer has really technically been no. So is he willing to do that? Is the athletic director and the president going to say, hey, man, look, we can't afford to have another season like this when you've got to do these things to be here? Does it get messy? I don't know. I think it kind of comes down to, does he want to coach anymore? If he wants to be in the climate, I think he'll change and he'll be there. But if he doesn't, and everything up to this point has said that he doesn't like it, I think we get another coach that just says, you know what, things are changing. I'm not with the change and I'm out, which technically I respect that. If you don't like the way that your job is going, then quit. I totally understand that. I don't like the guys that constantly complain about it and then stay in it. I mean, if you don't like it, just get out. And I think Gundy, that might be the case here, that he may just get out and say that he doesn't like where it is. I don't want to be in it. And he gets out of there. So I think that's what we're running into here. All right, guys. Upset of the week. Now, we're going to let our guy that's on location, we're going to let my man Alec go first here. Who should be on upset alert this week in the Big 12 Conference?
Cody, let's see if we can get on the same page again here. To me, there's a couple of different ways to go. I think I kind of look at the UCF Arizona State game with the questionable status that Cam Scadaboo has entering this weekend. That concerns me, although Sam Levitt's back, but I'm not going to go there because I just don't think UCF is very good, and I think there's some regression coming to the meet for them this weekend. I'm actually going to go to Iowa State at Kansas. Kansas is +3 this weekend in Kansas City at Arrowhead. Iowa State obviously hasn't played very well the last couple of weeks. And if you look at the way KU has lost this year, a lot of one-score games. The only one that they lost where turnovers didn't really cost them was the loss at Arizona State. And part of me just feels like one-score game luck is eventually going to swing their way. So I wouldn't be KU as a.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like that one too. But go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, I'm going to go. You guys want to talk about a really bad scenario for the Big 12? I think Utah actually has a chance to shock a lot of people this weekend and beat Baylor or beat BYU. Excuse me. I mean, we all know that Utah. We just kind of discussed it. They don't have an offense right now. It's in shambles. They don't have a quarterback that can move the ball downfield. But I think their defense is still pretty good. That if they can keep it close going into the fourth quarter at home. In another night game there in Salt Lake City. I kind of like their chances to pull off an upset. What was it? BYU hasn't won in Salt Lake City since 2006. So it's going to take a BYU to snap a pretty big trend there to pull off the win there. But yeah, I think as bad as Utah's looked recently and as bad as they played coming out of the bye week, I think there's still a chance that they can pull off this upset and like we mentioned, put even more chaos into the Big 12 picture and into the college football playoff picture as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to.
That was where I was thinking as well, Cody, but I thought you'd go there.
So we were on the same page.
Well, I'm going to try to piggyback because
I knew that we would probably be on the same page, and I was like,
No, go ahead, Alec.
No, Utah, but I thought that would be one that Cody would want or you would want. And I think that there's good value from a gambling perspective on KU money line with how banged up Iowa State is defensively, and just the way they've played. And like I said, I think at some point, if you lose so many one-score games, that the luck is bound to turn in your favor. And part of me wonders if that happens for KU this weekend.
Right. I'm going to jump on the UCF Arizona State bandwagon if Cam Scatterboot doesn't play. If he doesn't play, UCF +3 looks really good. Again, I'm not a big UCF guy because I don't think their defense is worth anything, but I think Cam Scatterboot means that much to what Arizona State does offensively. Even in the pass game, he just helps everything as far as what they want to do. So that's what I'm going to go with as my upset of the week if Cam Scatterboot doesn't play. Moving on to lock of the week. What lock do you have? I'm going to go first, and I'm going to steal your all's thunder. I'm taking TCU over Oklahoma State. -10.5. I'm taking it. I just think Oklahoma State has quit. I think they have just chucked it in. And it is last week, it just kind of felt like, yeah, it's all over. And so I'm taking TCU, and TCU still trying to play for something. I guess technically they're still in it, I guess. But I'm going to take TCU -10.5 at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go that same route too, just because you mentioned, Oklahoma State, how they've been trending. The effort against Baylor, obviously, I think anyone that watched that game, it wasn't good. They were on quit watch at that point. I think the first half last week against Arizona State was better, and then they had that long rain delay, however many hours it was. And when they came back out of the locker room for that second half, Oklahoma State had looked like they just kind of checked out again. Oklahoma State, if you want to look back at the history, hasn't had a whole lot of success and has struggled when they play at TCU. So I think there's some trends there to watch. But again, also like you mentioned too, TCU's got some stuff to play for still. Bowl eligibility's online. If they can get a win, they're back to the postseason. So yeah, I'm gonna take TCU over Oklahoma State as a lock.
Who's Arizona playing? Can I take whoever Arizona's playing this weekend? Because they always just seem to get throttled nowadays.
They don't
play. They're playing a bye week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
so
know.
Take the bye.
That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because that pick would probably be right with the way they've played this year. If you're looking for a lock, I think that the TCU Oklahoma State game is certainly a good place to go. The Cincinnati West Virginia game is certainly one I wouldn't touch. I don't hate Colorado and Texas Tech. Texas Tech's pass defense isn't very good, and I just think that while they played better last week against Iowa State, Rocco Beck still had nearly 300 passing yards, and I don't think Iowa State's receivers, while the second best in the league, I don't think they're nearly as dynamic as Colorado. So maybe Colorado's line against Texas Tech, where I think Colorado's a 3.5-point favorite.
Yep. Gotcha. And that's kind of the spotlight game of the week. I think that's the best game of the week, Colorado at Texas Tech. Look, it's a lot of implications here. Tech is technically not out of it. They won a game last week, played pretty well. It was one of those games where, a lot of people thought they were going to have to play out of their mind to go to Ames and win. Well, that's not really what happened. I mean, they just played. Iowa State made a lot of mistakes. Texas Tech made a lot of mistakes. It was just one of those football games where Tech just won the game. I don't know that they're going to be as lucky because what you just mentioned, Alec, Colorado quarterback, receivers, everything they have going on there. Plus, Colorado, we keep undermining it because of what they have on offense. Their rush defense is really good. I know everybody looks at the Kansas State game where they went up and down the field on them, but you take that out of there, their rush defense is really good this year. And I think they'll do that again against Texas Tech, even with Taj Brooks. I like Colorado on the road here.
Yeah, I think this is the chance for, Deion Sanders to prove, whether Colorado is a real contender in this Big 12 race or not. Going on the road in an environment in a place in Lubbock, Texas, that's not traditionally easy to win in. I can't really believe I'm saying this given where, Colorado was at the start of the season when they got thumped by Nebraska, who looks, horrible again. But I trust Colorado more than I do Texas Tech right now, because they've kind of been one of those up and down teams this year where you don't really know which one you're going to get week to week. I mean, they played well last week. What was it the week before? Let me pull up their schedule here. I can't remember who they played prior to that.
Baylor.
Baylor and TCU,
Detroit,
where they lost back-to-back games where they just didn't look well again. I think, there's just some inconsistency there that's a little more concerning, where I trust Colorado more than to, go into Lubbock and get that win. I think the bye week for Colorado too will be huge, especially giving Travis Hunter some time to rest and get healthy. I like Colorado on this one.
Yeah, I also like Colorado. Going to Lubbock, understand the difficult setting it is for the Buffaloes this weekend. I will say, I think that this is an opportunity for Texas Tech. I guess I should say, if this is an opportunity for Texas Tech to get into a shootout, I think it's one of the few teams in the Big 12 that they maybe do not want to get into a shootout with. Because I think Colorado's athletes offensively are just really hard for a lot of teams in the Big 12 to match up with. I think you've kind of seen that. So even if it turns into a shootout, I just like Colorado because they have better playmakers on the outside. And Shedeur is the best quarterback in the conference for sure.
Yeah. Should be a fun weekend all around within the Big 12 this week. We'll find out a little bit more who wants to take a step forward to win in the conference, who's a pretender. I think we're going to find out all of that. So appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to leave the comments and hit the notification bell so you know when Big 12 Insiders content is coming out. Appreciate it from Cody and Alec. It's your man, Big B. We appreciate you guys. We'll check out later.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.